Fit to Love, episode 12, the top 5 myths about marriage.
Fit to Love is physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness to achieve the happy life you deserve. From exercise to cooking, relationships, and spirituality, you'll find all the inspiration you need right here with our host, JJ Flizanes.
Hello and welcome to Fit to Love, Sexy Saturdays. Today's show, the top 5 myths about marriage. This list was generated from a couple books, a couple blogs, and my own experience. So this is JJ's top 5 myths about marriage. And some of them are going to be very different than you've seen online because some people deal with sort of that the mass belief about marriage. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into some of the unconscious belief systems that people don't even realize they believe. And this is based on observation of many clients and myself, family, friends, and anyone in between who I've experienced and watched for the duration of my life thus far. If you've been listening to the podcast so far and you've listened to more than one show, again, I thank you so much for being here. Would love to hear your feedback about anything. If you've got some comments or questions about how I can make this better and more applicable to you or improve the sound quality, because I'm not a sound editor by trade and I am doing all the editing myself when it comes to the sound. So please bear with me and forgive me. You can send emails to info@invisiblefitness.com. And again, I thank you. In episode number 4, Not Taking Things Personally, Carol and I talked a little bit about sort of the inquisitiveness innately in some of us or in all of us, or the need to be inquisitive in order to change some of the patterns and habits that we have that don't bring us what we want. And I mentioned in that podcast that it was when I was 21. I've always been inquisitive, but it was when I was 21 that I really asked myself in relationship with another, sort of why I was doing what I was doing, why I was thinking how I was thinking, what I was feeling, and became ultra inquisitive to get to the end of that relationship to learn a very, very big lesson. So in these top 5 myths about marriage, I'm going to invite you to consider some things maybe you haven't considered before. Maybe it's a different point of view for you, and to sort of stretch your brain, stretch your ability to look at your life from a different perspective and to be open to something new that you may have never considered. So the first myth about marriage is that your relationship will be better off when you're married. And I'm sure all of you, in some point in your life, can look around at other marriages and see someone who went from a very on and off again dating situation. They went back and forth, or they were together for a long time and wouldn't commit. And then all of a sudden they got married, and then things kind of went downhill, or things weren't as great as they thought they would be once they got married. So if you're single out there, and you're thinking, well, when I get married, I won't have to worry about this, and this, and I'll always have somebody to be with, and I'll always have somebody who wants to do things with me, and we won't fight anymore. And because we're committed to each other, we're going to get along more. And because we're on the same team or heading in the same path, things are just going to gel differently. Well, that's not true. In order to allow the lessons that you're going to need to learn, because we all have lessons, and lessons will be repeated until they're learned. So in order to accept and sort of shift this myth, you have to understand that you are your own individual person, regardless if you're married or not. And the quality of your relationship before you get married is a very, very clear indication of the quality of your relationship after you get married. If you're the type of person who doesn't address your own emotional triggers and wounds, and your partner doesn't either, then it's probably not going to happen once you get married. The marriage certificate, a lot of times, or the ceremony, sometimes it's the ceremony that satisfies the woman, because sometimes, not always, but a lot of the times, women are so focused on that wedding ceremony. And the reason they are is because it's that one time in your life that you're going to be a princess. And people get crazy and nutty and psychotic about that whole thing. And so you get all crazy about the wedding and you want to be the center of attention. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that if that's the focus, then you're missing the boat, because the contract you're about to sign is saying that I'm going to be with this person for the rest of my life. And rather than having stars in your eyes about the marriage part, you're not being able to see through the dust and the smoke and the fog, sort of the reality of, well, what's life going to be like with this person for the rest of my life? Obviously, the wedding and the honeymoon period of the relationship is going to be fun and amazing. But what happens in the next 5 to 10 years? What then? Who is the person that you're marrying? What's their character? What are their habits? What are yours? What are the expectations you have for each other in relationship? When my husband and I first we had 2 kind of dates. The first was sort of not really a date, but it was a date. In between the first and the second date, we kind of discussed getting married. I mean, it was on an email. I got an email saying, you're the one, and I hope this doesn't scare you, and this is exciting. And it was very exciting. And we both told our parents, and at this point, we haven't even kissed yet. And we weren't intimate really in any way, except I think we held hands or maybe held each other, but that was really it. And here I am saying I'm basically going to marry this person before my second date. So second or third date, we sat down and we had out a piece of paper. In fact, I still have these contracts somewhere in the house. It would be fun to look at them, and maybe I'll pull them out after this podcast. In the next week or two, my husband and I can have a laugh over them. But I went through a series of questions about expectation in relationship. And we each took these questions and we filled them out and then we combined them. Until you sit down and really know what another person is thinking and what their expectations are, you're just assuming. And most of the time we all assume and default to what we want and what we think is going to happen or what we think should happen in a marriage. So your relationship will not necessarily be better off when you're married. It may be if you're that kind of person who does the work. It may be if your eyes are wide open and looking at that person and the honeymoon phase is over and now you're looking at reality from a more clear point of view. But if you're going into this relationship and you've had trouble and you've been trying to push and pull and you've broken up a million times and you fight all the time and then you get proposed and think, now it's all going to be better. I'd invite you to reconsider that, or if you're currently living it, you can shift it. But that illusion that your relationship will change just because you get married is not true. In fact, I wrote an article for the Daily Love entitled, Are You in Love with an Illusion? And as I was looking for it this morning before this podcast, I realized I never posted it on my blog. So I will be posting Are You in Love with an Illusion on my blog. And I'd love to hear any thoughts or comments you have about today's show on that blog, which is invisiblefitness.com/blog. Again, that's invisiblefitness.com/blog. Are you in love with an illusion? So that was number 1. Your relationship will be better off when you're married. Not necessarily true. It can be. In fact, my marriage is now better than it ever has been. But we took a big nosedive after the first year of being married and spent years 2, 3, and 4 wondering if we were going to stay married. And I will address that on another show at another time. But just know it can absolutely be healed and transformed and changed. Accept the lessons that get shown to you. Take them on. And by the way, only one person needs to do the work. Both people don't have to subscribe to therapy and to changing their thought patterns and their behaviors. It only takes one person. One person can make all the difference. All right. The next myth about marriage is that it is your partner's job to make you happy. This is one of those myths that's not very commonly talked about, but is absolutely, without a doubt, a very common belief that I see everywhere. And it's not even just in marriages, but definitely in marriages. If one partner is unhappy, they blame the other partner, especially if it came out of something that the partner said or wouldn't do or did. And this will also be another full show. It's called emotional manipulation, because it is no one else's job to make you happy. It doesn't matter what the relationship is. It's not your kid's job to make you happy and to behave in ways that please you. It is your job, because you're the only one who can think your thoughts, choose your thoughts, focus your attention on something, whether it be pleasing or unpleasing, continue the conversation in your head about whatever it is you're observing or focusing on, and generate and experience the feelings that you're feeling. No one else can control that. Nobody but you. So it's no one else's job to jump through hoops to make you happy. In fact, it reminds me of a time, because it is a very common belief, and I just want you all, especially if you're over the age of 40 or 50 listening to this, it is very in your generation, in the 50s and the 60s, if you're 50 or 60 or 70 and listening to this and older, this is how you got people to jump through hoops for you and behave in ways that pleased you. So I understand it's very common, and this concept may sound new, but it leads to a much healthier life and happier life for everyone when you release everyone else's responsibility to you. Because just imagine. So my mom and I were driving down to Orange County many years ago for Thanksgiving. She was in town. And the freeway system here, there's many different freeways, and it's very different than in Pennsylvania. So she got a little nervous because I'm, crossing many lanes to get to the freeway I need to be on to get to where we're going to be. And I didn't design the thing. It's just the way it is. And you don't really have a choice, because if you don't move all the way over, you miss your exit and you can't get on the freeway that you need to. So she was very nervous. And I remember, I think she said, "Your driving is making me nervous." I know I was studying the law of attraction, but I was nowhere near as proficient as I am with it now. But I said, it just innately felt wrong. I said, no, it is not my driving that is making you nervous. It is your focus on your thoughts about what could possibly happen because of the driving that is making you nervous. You can choose to look out a window, because it's happened to me too with, friends that drive crazy, or my husband's driving and I don't like the way he's driving. I get to choose to be in my head about, maybe I'm going to work out a problem, or maybe I'm going to think about the next show I'm going to record, or a guest I want to interview. I can busy and focus my thoughts in a direction that take me out of that situation. Or I could look forward and decide to play out fears. Well, if he keeps doing this, we're going to wreck. And if he does this and it does this. And so, but understand that's me creating that. No one can make you feel or think anything. So the biggest myth, I really wish I would have put this at the top, but number 2 is that it's your partner's job to make you happy. It really isn't. And the faster you can get your own needs met, identify your own feelings, know how to create strategies for that, you release everyone else in your life from the guilt and the shame that you might try to put on them. And then they want to contribute to you. You actually live a much happier life when you take responsibility for your feelings and your thoughts. You release everyone else from being a puppet in your show, and then you allow them to want to contribute to them. It frees them up, versus the other way is to think, so do you think that everyone else is going to shift to make you happy? How is that even possible? It's not. So the biggest myth, number 2, is that it's your partner's job to make you happy. It's not. Myth number 3, you and your husband will share everything, or you and your partner. Not necessarily. And if you force that person to share everything with you, that's called codependence. If there is because it's humanly impossible to take 2 people, especially if you are attracted to each other. If you are attracted to each other, it means there was polarity. There was a difference. There was an opposition. Opposites attract. We all know this idea. Well, if you're opposites, that means you're going to have different interests. And to all of a sudden try to conform these different parties into the same behaviors and thoughts and experiences is going to be very limiting and very disempowering and very constraining for at least one of you. And I can't imagine that anyone would be happy living in that kind of prison. So I would invite you to make sure you know who you are, learn who you are. I think I mentioned it in last week's Sexy Saturdays, is that, Bishop T.D. Jakes said on a recent Oprah Super Soul Sunday or a life class, and I'm quoting him, that said that we study everything but ourselves. And we really do. People get master's degrees and doctorate degrees and bachelor's degrees and take multiple certifications, and we learn and we study and we take certifications on all kinds of things. Days and weeks and years of time and attention into learning things outside of ourselves. But yet most of us are not a master of ourself. We don't know how we think. We don't know what our wounds are. We don't know what our beliefs are. There is never a time when you can't ask me, whether it be in a training situation, in a coaching situation, or just in my house. My husband asked me the other day, "Are you keeping this lid?" I said yes. And I've told him over and over again, there is always a reason for everything I do. So please ask me and I will tell you. I don't do most things for no reason. I'm completely aware of why I program someone's program to be like it is. I know exactly the the progression I want to create with someone. I make recommendations very specifically to clients when I'm working with them because of what I think currently is the next right step for them if they're asking for my help. So it's not random. And I would invite you to take a little time to be curious about yourself. And when it comes to sharing everything with your spouse or your partner, it's unrealistic. And not to mention, you're not honoring the parts of you that want to have expression because you feel like, well, they can't do that with me. So whether it be painting or writing or dancing or hiking or climbing or fishing, and there's something that's really calling to you and you're denying it, you're cutting off your creativity and you're cutting off your life force. Find the main things that you and your spouse love to do together and do those. But don't deny the rest of them because you have this idea that you have to do everything together. Because you might not be aware of how it's cutting you off, but your partner may. And then resentment builds up because, again, it's codependent. Have a life outside of your partner and know who you are and honor who you are. And if that person can get on board with 95% of that and share that with you, that's amazing. But 100%, it's not realistic. Number 4, you will never be attracted to anyone else again. Well, hopefully that's pretty obvious. We're human beings. Now, I think where this comes into play is with women. Hopefully you've listened to my first Sexy Saturday, episode number 6, which talks about the masculine and feminine energies. And if you haven't, I'd invite you to go back and listen. Masculine energy and feminine energy, in its purest form, they have polarity. They have opposition. One is very linear and focused. One is very free-flowing and bright and light and flowy. Obviously, that's the feminine. So those two are opposite. And men are inspired by, and masculine energy is inspired, because I don't mean to just make it men, but masculine energy is inspired by feminine light, feminine nurturing, feminine essence. And to think that one person, your spouse, is the only light you're going to notice is crazy. That's like saying because you have a car, you'll never notice an attractive car again, right? How many of your husbands notice really good looking cars? They drive up alongside of that person. They honk at them. They wave at them. They give them a thumbs up. They're like, hey, great car. But that doesn't mean they're going out and buying that car. That doesn't mean they're getting rid of their car and replacing it because they got turned on by another car. They're just appreciating the car. It's the same thing with women. They can appreciate and notice other women. It doesn't mean they're going to leave you. It doesn't mean anything about you. It's not about you, actually. Not that I'm encouraging men to come home after a day's work and tell their wives all the attractive women they saw. That's not what I'm saying. But I know a lot of women that get very offended when their husband's eyes start to look in the direction of a woman walking down the street. And that really means, my lovely friends, is that you're insecure. It's not them. It's you. So asking yourself, what is that? How can I heal that? Because if you focused on, oh, they're looking at someone else and not me, you're focusing on lack. Why not change that conversation and say they're looking at someone else because they're noticing she's beautiful? And can't you notice that someone's beautiful? Can't a woman look at another woman and say, wow, she's really beautiful, and have it mean nothing more than I appreciate your beauty? We appreciate beauty. We buy nice things. We love flowers. We love colors. Beauty is beauty. Who cares what form it comes in? The next step of crossing over is when there's somebody that acts on that. If your husband has been faithful and is with you, he keeps choosing you, and vice versa. Please don't tell me, ladies, that you've never noticed a really hot man. There's a lot of actors out there that I want to drool over, but I don't say that much because I don't want to be disrespectful to my hot husband. But, my husband's hot, but so are a lot of other men. And they're all over the place. They're in the movies. They're on television. They're in ads. They're attractive. That doesn't mean I'm going to leave my husband because I think, XYZ actor, boy, I'd love to tell you who I think they are, but I'm not going to, are really, really hot. It's just unrealistic. And if it brings up feelings within you, it just means there's some unhealed wounds of insecurity. And it's a good thing. It's a good little light bulb that can ask you to deal with that. Because I don't think as long as that's there inside of you, it's going to go away. You have to heal it. You have to figure out a way to release it and to transform it into more positive energy. And if it keeps happening, it's getting bigger and bigger, and don't ignore it any longer, because it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger and build up resentment and all kinds of nasty things that happen when we repress our feelings and our thoughts. So see if you can't consider working on that. And I promise you'll be happier at the other end of it and feel more free and released. So we have one more myth, but before that, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. If you are like most people who struggle with overeating, you may feel powerless over your habits and urges to eat. Powerless over what and how much you eat. Break the vicious cycle of emotional eating and take back your power over food with Dr. Lisa Gelper. Dr. Lisa Gelper has helped thousands discover their own power over food and help them to win freedom from the obsession and defeat that haunt yo-yo dieters, emotional eaters, and those who just hope to lose some weight. Visit her site at poweroverfood.com to read her articles, watch her videos, sign up for her monthly email tips, and check out her current classes. Again, that's poweroverfood.com. Get the hottest tips and latest trends for your business success with today's Innovative Woman magazine, a free print and online digital magazine. Plus, receive the special bonus video series, Platforms for Profit, the must-have marketing essentials for outrageous success, taught by media and marketing strategist Kathy Alessandra. Who is today's innovative woman? She's a smart and savvy business owner. She is driven and committed to success. She invests in herself and her business on everything from products to grow her knowledge, services to grow her business, and events to learn and connect with potential clients and customers. You can claim your free subscription today and get it mailed to your home or office at today'sinnovativewoman.com. The fifth myth about marriage is that because you're married, that means something. And I mean that in the ways of, you take someone who's been married for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and they'll say, I've been married 40 years. And don't you, when you hear that, make some assumptions in your head? You go, wow, you've been married 40 years. You must have a good marriage. Newsflash, lots of people stay in marriages because they're afraid to leave. Lots of people have friendships as marriages. They have no intimacy, they have no connection, they have no life together. Just because you've been married for a long time doesn't mean it's a real marriage. Now, if you're in that situation, you know what I'm talking about, and you're like, yeah, okay, I know. I'm talking about the observers. If you're observing and comparing yourself, let's say you're someone who's been married or you're in a really bad marriage. Actually, let's take an example of a friend of mine. Friends of ours were married around the same exact time we were. We hit the bottom around the first year, second year, and stayed in sort of a negative space until the beginning of year 4. But we worked it out, and I did a lot of work. And a lot of the guests that I'm bringing you in the show have helped me with that work. And so now we get to, year 4, 5, and 6, and I can honestly tell you that our marriage has never been better. So we have people who are in the same time frame, same age group, and their marriage is on a decline. It's on a decline, and it's getting worse and worse and worse because the issues aren't being addressed. And people just tell themselves, well, it's what I can live with. And I know from my marriage that some of us felt shame about what was going on in our marriage. But it isn't until you start looking around with eyes wide open, other people's relationships, can you see that even though, and this happened with clients of mine, even though they've been married 22 years, 18 years of that was not a real marriage. There's no connection. They don't sleep in the same bed. They weren't intimate. They traveled together, but they still slept in separate beds. That's not a real marriage. And people aren't really happy. And you can see that they're not happy because they're very frantically doing other things to compensate for the hole, if you will, in the heart that yearns and longs for that connection. Now, I can say that lovely couple, clients of mine, are no longer married, and one is now remarried, and how happy everyone is in being honest with themselves, because marriage felt like prison, because it was their third marriage, and God forbid, it's their third marriage, so why not stick it out? But thank God that they both had enough self-respect to say, no, we're going to leave, because we're still young enough that we deserve true happiness and companionship with another person in all ways and not just one way. Myth number 5 is that just because you're married and just because someone else is married means that things are going well for them. People don't normally talk about what's not going well for them. They have shame around it, and I understand. But I think that until you really look past the curtain of what's going on the surface of their relationship, you can actually start to see, oh, they struggle with that stuff too. We're all the same. Everybody has their lessons to learn, and everybody, just because the structure looks nice, it's like a clean house. I used to say that people who have a really, really clean house are hiding something, because people who have a really OCD clean house are trying to show the world that they have everything together. It's a control thing. And because I have everything together, that life must be good. When in actuality, 9 times out of 10, there's something below the surface that's eating away at you. And you don't want people to know because you're embarrassed and it hurts and it's shameful. And with that said, I'm going to make a book recommendation right now. And it's to pick up, especially if I've triggered anything in you, if you've heard shame. And if I have, I apologize. Obviously, I don't mean it personally because I'm not talking to you exactly individually personally. But if anything has sort of triggered some stuff, a book I'd highly recommend is Brene Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection. That's the first recommendation. And then, come have a conversation with me. InvisibleFitness.com/blog. Check out Are You in Love with an Illusion? If you're single, it's a really empowering thing to do is to get your stuff together and to be clear and be solid within yourself and work your stuff out now so you can attract a higher quality partner. But just know that when that partner is attracted, you're also going to have some other issues that you're going to need to attend to too. That's just the way it is. And how you do it and how you embrace it can make all the difference in how successful and how fast you kind of get through some of these lessons. So with that said, I thank you again for listening to the Fit to Love podcast show. I invite you to subscribe on iTunes. Make sure you check out Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays. Those are both videos, and I'd love to hear from you. InvisibleFitness.com/blog, or come on over to the website, fittolove.tv. Have a great day. Is your website working for you? If it's not, Every Angle Media can help transform your existing business presence and build you a website that works when you're not working. Visit us online at everyanglemedia.com. Do you want to learn more about your hormone health and how to get it properly tested? Then sign up for our Healthy Hormone Kit at nourishingwellness.com. This kit features healthy eating and lifestyle tips to help you heal your hormones naturally. The Fit to Love podcast show offers you 6 days a week of helpful content to achieve the happy life you deserve. Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays are weekly videocasts, while Wellness Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays, Freedom Fridays, and Sexy Saturdays are audio-only shows themed every week to address your holistic life and needs. If the show inspired you, we would love for you to share it and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Head on over to fittolove.tv for recaps of every show, resources, and to join the community. That's FIT2LOVE.tv. Have a fit and fabulous day.